2, 1. Over. I want it.
Well,
Towards you there.
well, okay.
And, this is Stan Tesley speaking, and I'm interviewing today Mrs. Tom R. McFee about her husband's experiences in World War II. What?
Believe this.
Go ahead.
We don't tell them
I can stop this anytime, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. John is I can call you. Well, they're telling over here. I know her.
What is her name?
She's Helen McClellan. Her mother, you know Helen probably. That was Helen.
What class was he at UT?
Well, he started in 1940, and he never really had a class then. He didn't think he had one
He
for the
would
time
have been class of
would have been 44.
Yeah.
Should have been.
43. Yeah.
Well, he had to go overseas, and he came back and finished up, but he never went to any reunions. He wouldn't have known anyone.
Right.
The other ROTC maybe.
So he must have gone, you know what, you remember when he went into the service? He was
It was early 43, I guess, or late 42.
And he'd been in ROTC at UT.
Right.
So that he went in as commissioned officer.
Exactly.
And what branch did he go in?
He was in infantry.
What do you think he remembered most about leaving home?
That he would have?
I know you would have when he left.
Yeah, we were not married then. I was still in college. Well, had gone out of the state to college, Kentucky. And, I know that he had heavy responsibilities on the farm here, not so much when he was in school and working, and of course he could have stayed out very easily because of his farm. He came back to it and worked for several years on the farm after he got back. So there would have been no question about his not having to go. I worked in a coal company office, Southern Coal and Coke, and they brought some men in from the mines that thought they would rather stay here than go, and they put them in the office so that they had that privilege.
Okay.
But I think what his feelings would have been was that he wanted to do what most that age and what he knew he should, but that he, I'm sure, hated to leave the farm and the responsibilities that he carried when he was home.
How old was he at that time? About 20, 21?
He was born in 22, in November 1922.
He was about 21.
Yeah.
Was anybody else in his family in service that
he had a younger brother. He was the oldest of the family. The brother was in the Navy, and he was in the Pacific, of course. I don't think he was in maybe. He didn't go in as early as Tom, and I think by the time he went in, he maybe wasn't in all that long.
Right, probably wasn't. There was how much difference was in their age?
Well, maybe 4.
Well, okay. He was just gotten here in time. Got a little trading together.
Yeah, this is the way I recall it. I'm not certain on that.
Do you remember, and I'll just call him Tom if that's okay, if you know.
Sure.
Do as best you can, tell me what happened after he went in, where he went to, and then the next. so forth. You just kind of take it from there.
Well, he went from, when they pulled him out of the university,
Sure.
we've been doing this with him too.
Okay.
I haven't fooled with it, one of the other women. When they took his class out of the university, he would have been just going, I guess, early junior year, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
They sent them to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Right.
And they didn't leave them there very long. They were all of a sudden, I'm sure, totally trained in a very short length of time. I say totally, I wonder how much.
Right.
But then they sent them to Camp Kilmer in New Jersey. Isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was there for several weeks, as I recall. I don't know, maybe a little longer than that. And then they sent him overseas. He landed, I think, in France.
Directly from the States to France?
Yes.
He doesn't go via England or anything?
I don't think so. I've been in England the last 3 summers, and I don't think so. I'm pretty certain because of that that I'm sure he had never been in England, because he didn't go with me the first summer. Then he was gone the next 2 summers. He landed somewhere in France, I'm pretty sure. Possibly Germany, because they were early on then but he was in both Germany and France.
So D-Day was after D-Day when he got there, had already invaded.
They were immediately thrown into battle.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the first day he was in battle, his immediate officer was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to move up and take that place. All of which I only learned, let's see, I guess I learned that only when his group, infantry group, started getting together again, which was the last 6 or 7 years of his life. Up until then, a few of them possibly had, but they haven't done much about getting together. And so he never really referred to any of this, and I didn't know any of this.
A lot of veterans don't do much talking for many, many years, so never talk very much about it. We was in battle all the moment he got there.
Oh, yeah.
And he took over from his superior who was killed.
The second day.
Okay, and then what from there?
Well, they were in a lot of fighting, and I have some letters from there. Of course, they don't spell out too much about the places. I have some email and then other letters, and there's not too much. There are a few comments. I haven't looked at them too recently, and that's been quite a time. But I do know that the weather was terrible. It would have been winter time, and the weather was bad. I think the supply was a problem, so it was not much that you got, I guess. And but they had a lot of that going on early on, and then he when his unit left to come back home, and he thought he would be with them when they did. They held him for occupation for 1 year in Germany. Mm-hmm. So he had charge of an occupation camp in Germany for a year before he got back in.
You all married before he went home?
No. We had been in high school together, and I had gone to Kentucky to college, and he had gone to university. Mm-hmm. And we didn't marry. In fact, at that time, one was a little more. So we waited until he came back, had worked, which he had never done, as far as salary. And he worked for 2-3 years. And we We were married in 49.
Important.
He worked up until that.
Does he ever comment on his bad experiences that you saw?
No, he really rarely, in all those years, referred to it. But when he went to one reunion in Chicago before, about the time that we married. I think we'd been married maybe about 1 year, maybe two, and that's the first one when they finally tried to contact most of them. And he went to that one that I did not go on. I think he flew up to that. And then it was several years before he started trying to go to most of them. And I went with him to one in Cincinnati. And I learned from one of them, a little bit younger, but not much younger than Tom Likely, a younger man that was there who, at this point, was a furrier in Chicago and had apparently done quite well. Actually, he was pretty well to do before that. And very handsome young man who was there. I don't remember whether his wife was with him on that first trip. But anyway, he made the point to tell me that early on when they were in battle, that Tom had ordered him to go out front to, I don't know, I guess to see about positions. And he turned around and looked at this young man. His name was Mahon, his last name, M-A-H-O-N. He said that Tom turned around and looked at him and realized that that young man was scared to death, and Tom said, "Oh, I will go." So I picked up some things like that always.
Let's see, when he went in from UT, he was second. What was his rank?
Well, it should have been more than it was. He was Lieutenant Colonel, but he was pretty slow. They didn't. They used a point system for a while too, if you remember. And I don't really know how that worked.
Did he stay in the reserve when he got back?
He did. He stayed in the
He served every summer and that sort of thing.
Taught 1 year at Fort Leavenworth, which sounds like a prison. Isn't that where one is?
I think so.
But also, I think that's where his camp that he went to. And I don't know whether the General Command School out there. I think maybe he went through that. I don't know what that is. Anyway, what it sounds like, I say.
They call that class he was in.
Or well, it's probably aptly named, isn't it?
Did y'all ever go into any UT reunions?
Not really. And Tom never really felt he had a class after he came back. I expect that's pretty universal, was it?
Yeah, I went to one, and it was so demoralizing to me because there were so many girls there whose husbands did not come back or were wounded.
Absolutely.
Because the war took a terrible toll on them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They just grabbed them up there on ROTC, you know.
Absolutely. Oh, it did.
That's 43, a bunch of them went to the Pacific, and they just wiped out.
Now, which were you in?
I was in the Air Force.
In the Air Force.
Yes, I was.
Well, that was Pacific Likely, was it, or not?
Well, it was
both.
It was kind of both. Yeah, I was in India, China. I was flying from India to China. Questions here that will be easier for you to answer because I know your information is limited.
Well, it is somewhat. I remember, I know Bill Bell Prayer was in that Flying Tigers. I don't know if we all knew that group. Tom did go to, he graduated in animal husbandry, which they call something more, I suppose, euphonic, I don't know, but differently now. go to the anything, their reunion type
Right.
thing. And his dad had been with the Hoover 100 years. Maybe shy of 2 years now. Yeah.
You ever mention anything about people from other parts of the country when he was out there trying to react to it?
I'll tell you how I reacted. I don't know about him and Tom. I'm sure it's a puzzle to me as to how he understood, particularly those that were from the New York Bronx. Because I had a phone call. We had not been married too long. When I had a phone call, and it was early on, Tom did work on the farm for a while, and we were either going to have to get bigger with the operation, or he needed to get a job because, well, there's nothing new about that. It's not easy to make a living on one, and so he was either going to have to get more equipment and get bigger, or so he chose to go to work, which I think was. But however, he still operated the farm with beef cattle on it always, and in fact, still a little bit now. But he was still on the farm at that time, so that I could at least get a hold of him if someone were to call or to come back. And I had a call from someone that I could not understand. This was a few years after we were married, and probably before that, definitely since then, we've had foreign guests almost any place you put your finger down on the map. And I never had any trouble with them. They had broken English and sometimes even an interpreter. But I never had anyone that I could not understand. But this man that called, I could not understand. And but I did know that he said he was at Concord Park. So I found Tom on the farm and told him that I would go up and lead home somebody that was up there that I could understand very little except he wanted to see him. And when I got him, his name was, anyway, when I brought him down here, he had his wife and a young son. And I think that was it. And they were traveling from New York to Florida for vacation. And I simply could not understand what he was saying. And when Tom started talking to the father, and I tried to the son, it was worse. So there was just no conversation I could make.
Where were you from?
And they were from the Bronx, and they were Italian, but they did not have an accent that was foreign. I understand it was Brooklynese or Bronx or something. I ran into the same thing when I went to New York. Tom had an uncle that was very eminent surgeon in New York in the early years. And when we went up to visit them, I took the children several times, and we went to one of the World's Fairs, that sort of thing. And when I would ask for direction on the tube going home, it just didn't do any good for me. I had to just take them out. I know they could pick up that I wasn't native because when I made a phone call from the World's Fair grounds one time at a public phone, the woman that was using it turned around and told me she would only be a moment or something like that. And then when I took it and made a comment to her or thanked her, she said, "Oh, well, you're from the South." I don't know whether it was that I wouldn't be in any big rush anyway, but whatever it was, she immediately let me know that she knew I was out of pocket. But I can't imagine that Tom would not have had problems with that. I didn't hear him say that specifically. I do know that he had a very, very serious hearing problem in his later years. And I would say a large part of that had to be service connected.
I would think so. You remember back in think it was 1933, when we went to Chicago for the World's Fair. I was just a kid.
Yes,
And stayed in a South Hotel. I was really impressed. That had a swimming pool in the basement. I thought that was
What
great.
if it's still there? Some of the old ones have been brought back to life.
I would doubt it.
Uh-huh.
But I could not understand the elevator operators and the people around it. It was just Greek to me.
Absolutely.
Everything they said in the Midwest. I don't know.
Yeah.
They probably weren't even from the Midwest. People in the
Likely.
Right. I remember that it just would frustrate me. Is
it not frustrating? Well, we have had loads of foreign guests, and my son-in-law, who's a nuclear scientist, constantly has somebody coming in, leaving here for 2 and 3 weeks, Russian, Japan, you name it. And I've never had any trouble with any of them. It might be broken English, it might be quite an accent, but never have I had any trouble. But this other is a foreign language, and I don't know how Tom could possibly have managed with it. Because he had quite a few. I know some other things he said that I don't know whether need to be put in any comment. But there was an ethnic group that he said always were medical, and they were never out front.
Exactly. I would be surprised from what
I think that's not true.
But
I never knew him to prevaricate, so I have to think he knew something there that bothered him.
How called Clockwork Orange.
Yes, I know the name. I read
it's written
lots, but I haven't read it.
It's written in this, at least the author attempts to write it in this Brooklynese.
Oh, really?
And the whole book's that way, and I can hardly get through it reading it. First place get tired of reading that kind of stuff, but it's a foreign language.
Well, I guess it is. I remember A.B. Kaplan and some things that I've read that were, I don't know whether it's the same sort of thing, but some that have been in dialects that are hard. And of course, I think a lot of the Southern dialect that you read has a lot of it, of course, was written by people that don't know the South anyway, but some of it's ridiculous.
Right. It is.
It's totally ridiculous.
Kind of like the way you speak it in the movies.
Yeah, right, which is nowhere near correct.
How long was he out of the States?
Well, I'm sure some information, but I don't think he was gone more than 2 years, maybe.
He went in 43, he get back in 45.
He was back, but then
46. Let's see. I got back. I was only over 13 months. They flew us to death. They darn near killed us, but they sent us home in a hurry once we got our time.
Well, I guess it wouldn't have been before.
I bet it was 46 because it was November 45 before I got back. So I kind of came in the Air Force at the back door. I was a civilian pilot. Instructing Air Force cadets. And then the Barrack Command and the Air Transport Command.
You went in.
Right.
You probably know who was his first name? Ferris.
Yeah, I guess.
I've been up with him early on.
Yeah. Many.
I don't doubt. They keep a nice group going. I know Ken Carpenter and Mary flies too. And they stay in a very nice little group. Enjoy one another.
Did he keep in touch? With any of the people that he served with?
Yes, he did a surprisingly good job about that. I think he did fairly early on. I know, of course, he was here at Christmas, but when we began to go back to the small group it was to begin with, and then it built up with those who were coming back. And I think 2 or 3 times they had some little speech thanking Tom for a lot of paperwork in keeping the addresses and contacting. Amazed at how well he was thought of. Not personally, since I know what his friends and the area and the family thought of him, but to have comments that I did from these men was just amazing.
Pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I have an idea of what he would have impressed him most about being overseas.
Well, I think he thought the winters which he experienced were very, very severe.
Mm-hmm.
I've known how to complain about anything. He just never was.
He just wasn't
No.
okay.
So that other than just knowing that the winters were quite bad, I often wondered, and finally, only in recent years, asking why. I'm not crazy about fruitcake, and I think that's true of a lot of people, but he wouldn't eat it all, and I only more recently had asked him why he didn't like it at all. And I never had heard this, and I learned that his mother had sent a fruitcake to him, and he ate it all. So I would say that the food, I never did have a can of Spam in the house ever.
No, I guess not.
But I don't think I have much else that I would think of.
You know, if his units took any prisoners to the ever mentioned there.
Oh, they did.
He ever making comments as to what he thought of, good, bad, or indifferent, what kind of people
It really comes out at the moment. Of course, I have a fantastic library of, well, Civil Wars as well. I think I do. As well as World War II, and I know he read everything he could get when he had time for that period. All Churchill's he has and has read. I've been to the home, but he was not with me by that time.
prisoners and were received over here in the States. You know, we took care of a lot of them over here.
I was over at Black Mountain last weekend at a B&B, and I know that our wonderful old Assembly Hotel at Montreat received, I think that was Japanese they had.
Is that right? These were German prisoners from Africa Corps.
Yeah.
But he had something to do with over here. He said they
Rama.
were just haughty as they could be. He said, he'd never been overseas, and he said it scared me to look at them and talk to them. He said, I thought, oh, it's going to be awful to fight these guys.
Yeah.
But they were really, of course, at that time, they were still thought they were going to win.
That's so true.
And then, of course, I think later on in Europe after after the invasion, D-Day, they were like prisoners themselves, so they were pretty well cowed down by then.
I'm sure that they had to be totally shocked at the treatment that they received at the hands of Americans. I do know one thing that Tom told me, because my daughter I remember this, and I think I remember it because of the fact that my daughter and 4 or 5 girls spent between her junior and senior year in college, they spent the summer in Europe. And in Munich, she had a friend that she had known in New York State at camp up in New York State. And when she visited this friend, she would not go with her. The friend would not, who lived there, a very wealthy girl, which I guess has nothing to do with it one way or the other, but maybe it does. I don't know. But she would not go with these girls out to view the but I do know that Tom had told me that and I assume he maybe even was a part of it by his mentioning a time or two, that they lined up the civilians and had them look at what had happened. I'm sure we all know that now, but so much has been written and done about. I do recall his telling me that, but
Yeah, I'm glad he did it. So they couldn't say they didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, did he ever speak of his relationships with civilians overseas? Turns out, well, I guess particularly after the time he spent.
I think he would much rather been at home back then.
I guess.
And I don't recall he had said, I doubt that he had a lot of supplies in there, and I don't know what all was being involved. But I have been sorry, and I guess a little surprised that he didn't learn the language, because he was nothing but honor the whole time at UT, and I know he could have done it. He either didn't have any interest in doing it, or just maybe the situation was not the best.
Very much.
I don't know. Well, he had these German prisoners.
But
I don't know.
he may not have much contact.
That very well could be.
You know, in the time he served overseas, did you ever mention he had any contact with Allied troops, such as English, Australian, French, what he thought of?
I don't know how much contact he had with them. I don't think I would be quoting him on some of that. I know that all of us have heard comments that they'd be about as willing to fight the English next time, which is, they're just so super. And I love England, and I've gone back and spent quite a bit of time in the last 3 summers. But, well, of course, we all know that what Montgomery, what he was, how in the attitude. And I think maybe that feeling transposed to the whole English.
The comment, the fellow I interviewed was saying his commanding officer was assigned to Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to Montgomery's headquarters to ask him what particular assignment that Montgomery wanted to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
He said, word back, said, I haven't got time to see you, but you guard my right flank. He said, I put up with that a day or two, and said, we just moved on out. Said, we were headed 50 miles further into Germany than his right flank, where he ever got stopped.
I don't doubt that at all from anything I've ever read, heard, or anything else. And
well, you had to keep one soldier stationed on some road every morning that Montgomery would pass in his Rolls Royce. Mm-hmm. And that would prove to Montgomery that the Yanks were on the job. He said, we were 50 miles up there, there's one soldier.
And I imagine, I don't know that I heard it, that he stopped for his tea and did all that. Who knows? But that's the impression. And right. I don't believe that the whole, that all of these that were over there, I don't think all of them could be wrong in picking up that sort of attitude.
Did he write pretty often?
Very. Mm-hmm.
Did he make any photographs when he was over there?
Not too many, and I looked at some the other day, and they're not good at all. I don't know that Tom even fooled with a camera over there, but he did have a few pictures, but they're not very good. They're small. I expect most of them are small that would have been made over there.
Oh, yeah.
I have some from World War I that probably are better, but Uncle Tommy, he was World War I. They pulled him out. They sent all of Johns Hopkins senior class over in World War I. But then in World War II, he did not have children, and Tom and I were very close to him. As were, uh, there were some good pictures of his, but then he had charge of a whole field hospital in World War II in France, in a chateau there that I have pictures of, and some very nice pictures of his, but I don't know if, I do know, and I hope my son, I'm sure he still has it, several things were made in this occupation. Oh, and I have a painting back there that looks, well, it would be classified very primitive art look to it, that one of the interns in this camp would have done for him. And then one was a large box that opens up like this. And it's sort of like a sewing box. It has 3 layers that was carved. It's rather, well, it's Germanic looking, and that's not all that pleasing sometimes. And another carved box. It had my name on top of it. It's a small jewelry box. I have back there somewhere. This size, carved out of wood. Pictures though, there were not very many of those.
That's interesting. What age was his uncle when he served in World War I?
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Well, at that time he had graduated from the University of Tennessee and was president of the senior class there. Pretty small class. And then he went to Johns Hopkins and was pulled out that whole class. Same way that Tom was pulled out of the UT later in World War II.
And then he served in World War II.
He was in both.
How old was he? You know,
well, when I first knew him, it was after Tom and I married. And that was in 49. And I expect I met Uncle Tom probably about 1950. And he died in, maybe even ended up in Who's Who in America, not just in a profession or Tennessee or anything else. And fortunately, I don't know where I got this one, but I have the book that he's in. I expect the only one from Concord we'll have in a long time. But he had quite a few more pictures. I have one with him, by the way, with Montgomery. And this man with the ribbons all over him that was a post-screen of Uncle Tom. I have that out in there. It's about this size. And very
what was he in his 50s or 60s when he started?
Yeah, he had to go.
He was, I guess, what was his rank when
he won the.
When he was over season world, you know, second time in World War II.
I know he has the Father there, which I have back there, and all numerous things like that. Well, he would have been. He had to be in the 60s. Very heavy, but then he was also on the staff of all the major hospitals in New York too. So he was honored quite much in his career.
Did your husband ever voice any opinions early or late about?
He's well informed with radio and TV. We weren't over communicated with certainly. And no, he saw it as a duty that you do, and of course, just like we pay taxes, I don't feel very thrilled with the way things are being managed, but I'm going to pay them, I guess, and really try not to protest too much, maybe. But no, I think. Well, and I'm sure he thought it was necessary, certainly once he got over there. And I expect in retrospect we know that it was more than, even though we worked into it, but
the fellows that are listed in important to them that it was war. The general impression that they got to verify, or they, might be living under the
absolutely.
low standard.
Right. found it very hard to be around these Vietnam and Korean, well, Vietnam veterans, and I do think it's very, very sad that they, the whole thing is sad. But I think what's the saddest to me is that, for example, a young professor at UT, I hadn't met him 10 minutes. This has been 10 years ago, maybe 8. I hadn't met him 10 minutes until he was feeling very, very sorry for himself. This was the group Tom was there. I don't think he heard it. And I always found it so very strange and I guess unbecoming for them to be so upfront with the fact that they felt like they'd been handed a raw deal, which they were.
Yeah.
But somehow to me, that was so alien to what I had seen in Tom, who did his duty and went on and forgot about it, and would have been the case also in Vietnam. But I think it's the different attitude and the different background and the different expectations of those two generations. I don't think it's because the one was the right war and the other wasn't, and it definitely was not. I think we all agree to that. But I think it's the difference in the men and sorry for them. And I know they weren't maybe so honored and that a lot of things were wrong when they came back. But I cannot imagine letting that be a part of their personality the way I've seen it.
It's hard for me
To relate to that.
I can't.
I guess I have to wonder what they would have thought being pulled out and sent and having people drop right and left. It was, in that sense, it wouldn't have been any different. I think it must have been that they felt it was for naught and that they weren't honored when they came back. But were you honored when you came back? Tom wasn't. I think people were so glad that, well, I suppose those that hit New York a year later, there wasn't anything but just a man coming home.
Well, I got back, I guess, you might say, during a happy time where at least there up east, where they hadn't been inundated with soldiers. You know, if you went Western, somebody might just pick up a check for you. Somebody should really know.
Okay, I guess now that's wonderful, and I'm sure that would make that would be a contrast maybe to the later war. Tom didn't have any of that at all.
But I've had trouble accepting the Japanese. I have trouble accepting all of them.
Yeah. True.
Really, it bugs me the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Well,
but that's
when I was in
Scotland,
not in Scotland, up near the border in the Lake District, and stayed at B&B 3-4 years ago. A man from Scotland that he and his wife were seated at the same table at breakfast in this B&B, and I guess he must have asked me. I certainly wouldn't have volunteered it, but when he did know that I guess that was obvious from the States, and asked that, he thanked me for the fact that our government and our men had done so well by them. And that was in the Lake District in northern England.
That's good.
That's the only time I've run into anything like that, and it was such a surprise to me.
Do you have any particular feelings, or did your husband ever voice any feelings about the draft age people that didn't go in the service?
No, he never did. I knew who stayed and who did whatever it took to stay out, and I knew who made money during that period and advanced their career, and I've always known it and still do. And one whose sons are very prominent in Knoxville now, and I find myself thinking, you have to have had a leg up, wouldn't you? But no, never did I hear that from him. Although he did know of the, the ones who didn't. But I never heard anything that would have been unkind about that.
What do you remember most about his coming home?
Now, his was sort of, after the fact, as I said. It was a little bit different.
Yeah, it would be. What's
It was a whole year later, so there was no group coming and no, it was, so there's not any particular, other than just a happiness that he was home.
Sure.
And then he did stay in the military and, in the reserve. In fact, we were going, are you in the ROA here in Knoxville?
No.
Well, we went to most of that because, of course, he knew quite a few of them. Most of them, I guess. A lot of them. They were all, that's all different services, but nevertheless, he had known them through, I guess, growing up here too, as well as some that were in service.
No, I was, of course, I had a chance like everybody did to stay in the reserve, but I elected not to.
Here again, though, he stayed in reserves, I don't know how long, and I suppose his brother did. I don't know whether he's still in. I believe I might have, well, anyway.
I was kind of bitter. We received commission as first lieutenant, and our Form 21 was called. Right across the top of it says frozen and gray, which means we could never get a promotion. So we went over as first lieutenant, and we came back as first lieutenant.
Right.
And I suddenly wanted me for.
I think
and I said, that's.
Forget it, yeah.
Forget it.
Well, I know Tom, had he stayed one more month, he would have come back at a higher rank, but he was not interested.
Right.
I guess had it been one day, he might not have been interested. I don't blame him for that. And then he stayed in reserves for years, but apparently they work the same way, and I guess that's what the term being in the Army means, maybe, is that they do what they want to there. And so when he was ready to jump another grade, they terminated him. And isn't that a cute thing to do? Isn't that really cute? But there again, Tom had a full life, and he would have known how to be bitter about something, but on the other hand, that's
Treated that way.
oh yes, I'm sure it's not the kind of thanks you would want for staying prepared all these years. And believe me, that was a heavy thing because they really had to study hard and stay on top and a lot of field work. And then he taught several years. Of course, their teaching, I know some professor, and I don't think I ever really knew, went with Tom every year. I'm sure there were several of them, but I don't know, and didn't when he told me who it was, who he referred to. But the Army had such superior teaching facilities to what university had always.
Oh, really?
Very superior. This professor that went with him several times was just amazed at how these learning accoutrements that they had, how great they were and how much it helped. And the university, which I suppose was on a par with most, maybe, many at that time, just had nothing to approach it.
What year did he die?
In 86.
86. Well, he hasn't been passed away too long.
No, it'll be 4 years.
4 years.
Later.
How long were y'all married?
38 years.
38 years.
I had 2 children.
What's your son do?
Well, he is in an engineering field at Oak Ridge. And I know very little about what he does.
Your daughter, she married?
My daughter's married. They don't have children. And she had graduated from an excellent job with the state that she could have had all her life, but it wasn't. She liked people, and she had gone to the top of her department and all that, but I think it's not what we would. I get down in